Welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today we're going to do a July orchid collection update. I'm going to share with you a couple of blooms and some exciting things that are happening this month. So let's begin. The first plant I want to share with you is the Zygonisia snowberry Kyla. Now this plant bloomed last year and it had a beautiful display, and this time around it is putting out 4 spikes. On one immature tiny little growth, there are 4 spikes coming from this particular orchid, and that is super surprising and really exciting because I have never seen that before on a plant like this. Not only that, each spike has anywhere from 2 up to 4 buds. So even though it doesn't have a huge amount of flowers, that is still pretty impressive. So I am really excited to see this one come out into full bloom, and currently the first bloom has just opened up and it looks so lovely. This plant is currently potted in moss, so it has no problem dealing with the heat and the dry weather that we've been having, so it's definitely living its best life. Now the second plant is the Doritis pulcherrima. Now this one is a relatively new addition that I got early in the year, and it finally spiked as the weather has heated up and it put out a beautiful show. If you like Phalaenopsis but you don't like how the spikes are arching, then the Doritis might be just up your alley. It has these upright spikes that look great, you don't need to stake them at all, and the flowers are so beautiful. This one is a pyloric type, so you can tell that on some of the petals, it has this nice wavy patterning to it that gives it a very unique look. Flowers themselves are very pale. It has this light pink tinge on the pyloric petals, but the overall flower is white. It gives a nice delicate look to the plant overall. Now the next plant is the Bulbophyllum Tiorum. This is my only bulbo because I am not sure how to grow these plants and I don't know if I have enough moisture to keep these plants very happy. So this plant actually spiked for me this year. I got it last year at Andy's Orchids and I thought it was beautiful, and this year it put out 1 spike with these lovely flowers. I almost missed it because it was hidden in the back where it's nice and dark and damp in my side yard area. These bright colors of these flowers really caught my eye and they look so stunning. When the flowers are a little fresher, the tips and tinges at the bottom of this lip has more of a yellowish coloration, so there's more of a deeper contrast between this kind of reddish orange color and this bright yellow texture. So far this plant is doing okay. It's not doing the best, but I'm hoping that I can improve upon my culture with this one and maybe grow more bulbos in the future. Then the next plant is the Bratonia Shelob Tolkien. I have been kind of neglecting some of my Oncidiums, so they haven't been doing the best, and the Bratonia Shelob Tolkien is no exception. This plant put out 1 spike with 2 flowers, which is a very poor show for what this plant can do, and that's primarily because it has been quite dehydrated. I have it outside in my side yard, and where this plant was located, it didn't get enough water. So I will have to bump up the waterings for this plant, and hopefully it will plump back up and it'll stay healthy, and hopefully the next season it will have a much better show. But still, I really like these spoudery flowers, so it's definitely staying in my collection. Now the last plant that I have in bloom is the Dendrobium parishii, and this one has only 1 flower that I can show because unfortunately pests had gotten to this plant. So originally it had about 3 to 4 spikes coming out of the cane, and each individual spike on the cane can branch out and have several buds. So I did see that it was going to have a couple of buds and things growing on, and I did my best to try to save it, but unfortunately all of the other parts of this plant just got eaten up by pests. So I only have 1 bloom to share, but hopefully I will get better at this, and this plant has finally matured enough so that it can actually bloom. So I am really excited to see how we'll do next season. So for the rest of my collection this year, it's been a really tough month. I have been pretty busy and we've been having heat waves, we're dealing with a drought, so I have to watch how I water more carefully because every little drop counts. And in my collection, I've been trying to balance between giving it just enough water and dealing with the heat to help it chug along. So because we've been dealing with a lot of heat waves and a reduction in water usage, the plants are not necessarily the happiest at the moment. And in some cases, some have been so dehydrated that I have lost buds, I have lost spikes, I have lost new growths. It's a pretty scary sight in my collection right now, but hopefully as the weather turns, we'll be seeing some bright lights at the end of this. Here in Southern California, the weather doesn't really cool off until October, so I do have a couple more months where I have to really pay attention to the waterings and help these plants along. I've noticed that all my plants that have been in small bark or in a moss mix that are outdoors have been doing much better than the plants that have been potted up in a larger bark mix. They've just been able to retain a lot more moisture and water, and that's been really helping it get through this season. So I think in the future I may have to start moving into a more moss-like setup since we're having such a huge reduction in water usage at this moment. The other thing I'm really dealing with is pests, and primarily pests outdoors. So I am growing a lot of my cattleyas outside, and they're slowly starting to spike because I have a lot of summer bloomers, but unfortunately some pests have been chewing on all of the spikes and all the buds, so I don't have anything to share. And that is really unfortunate because a lot of these are first-time bloomers, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they look like in their presentation, but I guess I'm just gonna have to wait till next year and the next growth, so that is just something I have to worry about. I'm not sure if there are slugs or snails or earwigs or what, but they don't really leave a trace. They just kind of eviscerate my buds, and all I see is a shell, and then inside it's completely hollowed out. Not only that, sometimes they'll just chew on the edge of my spikes, so the spikes fall over and it's completely gone. So if you have an idea as to what pest that might be, please let me know in the comments, and hopefully we can pluck them out and protect my plants. Now the last big thing I want to share is that I am doing green pod flasking of my Miltoniopsis roselei. So this is my second round of doing an orchid flask. The first one did with a Zygopetalum hybrid, and currently it's been a little over 2 months since I did that original flask. And finally, I'm starting to see the results. In 4 of my 5 flasks, I got germination. And not only that, it's a lot more than I originally anticipated. So there are all these little tiny dots of green caviar or protocorns in these jars, and I'm just waiting for them to continue to grow on. They're a little bit hard to see because they are really tiny and they are growing a lot slower than Phalaenopsis. So I know I have a long ways to go before I can get to the next stage and next step of this flasking period. And as for the Miltoniopsis, I am going to be flasking it with a green pod, and I'm putting it in another 5 jars. I have several pods of this plant, so I'm going to be testing out different techniques to see how I can improve and if I can get better germination with one method versus another. And I am really excited because this is my second batch. I finished making the media and it looks clean. So all I have to do now is just sow the seeds themselves, and hopefully that one will be more beneficial and we won't have any contamination. So far I've only gotten contamination in my first round of making media because I didn't autoclave it, and in the second batch I only got contamination in 1 of the 5 flasks, and that was primarily because I was not sure what I was doing, so I didn't have great technique. I think I've narrowed my technique down on keeping a nice clean environment while sowing seeds, so hopefully I won't get any contaminations with this particular batch. So that's what's going on in my collection for the month of July. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to follow along on my orchid growing journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!